In this video, I'm going to talk about how the UK is doomed financially and socially, and it's a topic I'll cover in a few extra videos in my channel also. And I think you should leave if you can, and I'm going to make a compelling case in this video. So essentially, firstly, the UK, I think, could be the first Western country to fulfill the acceleration to collapse meme, which I'm sure many of you have seen. There's this accelerationist idea where countries are being pushed in the West so far with woke ideology and lots of liberal feminist practices to the point of collapse. You know, many people who are wealthy are moving abroad from the UK. Many millionaires are leaving the UK because the high tax rate, and in some cases, people who are high earners in the middle class are leaving for a lower tax rate, and because the living costs are getting quite high. So many skilled upper middle class professionals are moving to places like Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Qatar to work in the finance industry there, where the income tax is lower and the living cost is higher for lower cost. The living quality is higher even though it costs less. And many people I know are planning to make that move. Some healthcare professionals are going to Australia, business owners, as I say, going to United Arab Emirates. And the country doesn't get it. You know, the wheels are falling off on how it's operating, right? Many people are figuring out all the BS. Many people who are hardworking, who thought they could succeed on the basis of meritocracy and competency, are realizing they're being deliberately held down, deliberately punished for actually working hard and being productive in this country. And as more and more competent people leave the country, there's a term you've probably heard called brain drain, the same way you might have white flight, where white people leave an area due to like social issues and crime and diversity. Brain drain is where people who are intelligent, they leave a country because there's no incentive to be there and other countries are more favorable. The same way you might see investments move from a poor performing country to a high performing country. And that's what you kind of have. Many skilled people are just going to leave the UK. You're going to have low quality people in positions of leadership, which you already have. And then you're going to have more and more low quality people throughout the ranks of any form of power, any institution, banking, any legal sector, accounting, tech, and the politics. You're just going to have lower and lower quality people as more quality people decide to leave one way or another, right? See, the thing is, the West kind of went from having a safety net to actually punishing good, hardworking people through high tax rates, censorship, DEI, and all of that type of nonsense. And, you know, having a safety net is admirable in terms of, you know, government benefits if you can't find a job, things like that. But it's become so warped that this kind of system has used all the government benefits to benefit any demographics that's going to favor big government, socialism, political correctness, censorship, things like that. So liberals, feminists, migrants, whoever benefits this type of woke ideology, this far left agenda that is being pushed by, you know, the economic forums of the world and things like that. That's who's benefiting from this system, not people like me, people like you watching this, right? So we're going to listen to two perspectives, someone who's a wealthy expat and also a local British person who actually moved as soon as they could, regardless of being that wealthy, because he wasn't. So wealthy person, then an average earner. Let's see what they have to say about the state of this S-hole country.
About criminals. You know what? One of the first policies that the new government wants to implement, the new proposal would release prisoners on determinate sentences between 40 and 43% of the way through their sentence. This is a new plan to release prisoners from prison because there's no space for new criminals. So a lot of criminals jailed, with the exception of sex crimes, terrorism, and a couple of others, would be let go less than halfway through their sentences. What does this say to future criminals? That if they get in trouble, oh well, they're gonna let me go early, and I'm probably not gonna get into that much trouble. And we're seeing the UK go towards a direction where migrants are the most important, not the native British citizens, where criminals are more important, where people from other countries that don't care about the UK, that don't care about integrating themselves into the country, are more important than the homeless population, than the students, than pretty much any local citizen. And the thing
So this is a first important point. There is high crime. You notice this throughout the London, for example. You notice it just feels unsafe at night. You have crazy people talking to themselves in public. I notice many shopping malls after school when you have these students that are kind of rowdy and the police can't control them. They're just roaming around like gangs of teenagers. And I have no problem with, people, particularly men and teenagers kind of, socializing the way they socialize, which could be a bit rowdy and a kind of come across a bit aggressive. But it's kind of like there's no level of civility in this society. And the only way to have civility actually is to avoid the peak time of everything. Go to the gym when it's not when it's not populated by, inappropriately dressed women with selfie sticks. Go to the grocery store. I've seen 2 or 3 crazy people around the grocery stores here when it's not so busy because there's less crazy people there. Go to shopping malls when it's not going to be after school time, or it's not going to be late in the evening, where in a civilized country you could go for a nice dinner in a shopping mall. But now it's like, is it safe there? Could there be knife crime? Could someone try to steal your phone? This is the ridiculousness of it. They've normalized criminal culture, and it's like everything. This system has normalized and not had any standards to actually enforce civility. You see this with people. Maybe I've seen some crazy behavior where people are playing music out loud on their phone in an actual gym where there's already music playing and they're not using headphones. You see all types of crazy low life behavior. It could be simple things like littering, people letting off fireworks in the street, literally in the street, not in their homes. And it's just like completely crazy behavior that everyone has to accept. No matter how loud and obnoxious people are, you have to accept it, because if you don't accept it, you're not being tolerant. And they really use the word tolerant to really exploit you, because you have to put up with any type of behavior, and the low class standards become the norm. And then everyone goes, F it, if they can do this, they can play music loud on their phone in the gym, then I'll do this. If people can get away with that, then why can't I get away with that? And it just becomes no level of social contract where people can be decent in society, and people become frustrated of why are they playing by the rules and not breaking the rules when so many other demographics get to, right? And then of course there's mass migration, and there's conflicts of different values. So there's all types of issues that you can't even discuss or address, and the system has no intention of addressing, and it will censor you or criticize you as far right or whatever for raising any of these issues as legitimate problems. So let's listen to a bit more of a further example of, because there's too many problems really to list in this country to really get out in one video, but we're going to go through some of the main ones here.
Have the non-dom regime. You have many other countries that you could choose all over the world. We actually have UK citizens that are going to Eastern Europe, specifically countries like Serbia, Montenegro, where you can pay a corporate tax rate of 9%, 10%. You can get citizenship because the UK is seen as a great country by these Eastern European nations. Or you can go to Dubai and the UAE, easy choice. For many British citizens, you can get a golden visa in Europe. You can go to Latin America. A lot of British citizens going to Mexico and immigrating to Mexico, which is a very funny world that we live in, where UK citizens are going to Mexico for more freedom and less crime. And those are the places where UK citizens that have wealth, that can do whatever they want, are protecting themselves from this new government that is likely to just take more of your own wealth to give it to the migrants, to give it to the non-binary people. So be careful. The future of the UK looks very scary. In the next couple of years, we don't know what's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you it's going to get much worse.
So the truth is it's going to get much worse, right? And there are so many alternatives to high-skilled workers, right? I mentioned UAE. He's talking about, parts of Latin America and Eastern Europe. And these countries over time, countries are going to have to compete for high-skilled workers and high-quality people, right? Whether you see things like digital nomad visas, where some countries don't mind you living there for 6 months to a year or longer, on the basis you generate your own income and you're going to spend locally in the country and help the country essentially earn more money from longer term tourists. So this is really what's going on in your society, is just essentially people waking up to the nonsense and looking to leave and stop being mistreated by their own governments. Here you can see here that millions are fleeing Britain in their thousands. And, a record number of millionaires could leave the UK this year as political turmoil and the potential of higher taxes, which are definitely being enforced by this left-wing government, It's no longer a top destination for the rich. Many people want to leave the country. It says as many as 9,500 people with at least 1 million liquid investable assets will leave the country, more than double of previous years. So it really goes to show how this country is really losing its appeal to even the wealthy. The baby bust, here we talk about how Britain's birth rate is falling. See, a thing that often gets overlooked because people are so stressed about their own finances and the finances of the country is how, there's a complete breakdown of gender relations. So many single men, you see statistics, 60% of men are single, but 30% of women. So what's going on there? And you just have people who are not reproducing, essentially. You have a kind of castrated male population because they're treated like second-class citizens, all this special privilege going to women who are focusing on everything else apart from their career, being a career woman, being a consumerist, things like that. So you have a complete breakdown of social dynamics here, and you can see the graph. We don't even have to go through the statistics, but how rapid the decline of the birth rate is. And as you can see, there's a significant decline after the actual pandemic. So all types of nonsense is going on in this system, right? And we can say some of it is economic, but there's so much of it that is social. So it's not like you can save this country one way or the other. Some people will say, oh, well, you can save the country if you just lower the tax. Well, if you lower the tax, are people going to start reproducing? I don't think so, right? Because there's feminism and all this type of breakdown of gender war, however you want to word it. Okay, cool. If you stop the migration now, will that help social cohesion? No, because there's so many migrants that come in the country, like 700,000 to 1 million in quite a small country, the UK, in the last year or so. There's all sorts of social tensions about religion, about race and things like that. You're not going to be able to fix any of these problems. I think this is beyond the point of return. The only thing that could really fix the country are things you're not even allowed to discuss. Like, can you discuss mass deportations? Can you discuss, encouraging women to actually be wives and mothers instead of other things? So, because you can encourage women to participate in OF. That's completely legitimate, completely praised. There was an interview on Bloomberg, Bloomberg, the financial news site, the financial YouTube channel, where they interviewed the CEO, some senior role within OF, like the CEO of OF or the CFO of OF. And that was praised. But can a man even say, women should focus more on being wives and mothers? Or is that not permitted in this country? Is that a hate crime? This is ridiculous. This is how ridiculous this country is. It's not even worth speaking in this country, And people who get benefits of this completely deranged, biased system, in some cases it would be, like I say, liberals, feminists, migrants, things like that. They're just going to ignore it. Anytime you point out stuff I point out, and that's why I'm sure some of you like the channel, because I'm being open and honest with you. People like you just shut it down. If we want to use the shut it down meme, I'm sure you know what shut it down means. You're not allowed to express certain opinions, right? So it's like, you're just a situation where you're like, as a man, you can see all the problems all going on in the UK now. Men like me, many other people, I'm sure some of you are aware of Sargon of the Akkad. There's so many other different, Carl Benjamin, Lotus Eaters. There's so many other content creators. The same way you have conservative content creators in the US, you have the same in the UK. And we could see this problem coming. Any problem you have in your society, the working age, military age men can see it coming a mile off, 5 years ahead of time, 10 years ahead of time. But when you have these weak, liberal, soy boy type of men in positions of power, these type of feminist girl boss types, they're completely delusional and out of touch with what the reality is. So if you're going to keep ignoring people like me telling you the truth, other men telling you the truth, other skilled people in general telling you the truth, honest, good, hardworking people with basic critical thinking skills, okay, cool. Well, I'm not going to pay 40% tax. When my time comes, I'll leave the country. Many people will leave the country. When people are in certain financial situations, good or bad, and we're going to see someone who's on an average income here, they're just going to leave. It's going to say, if this country's saying F me and F my freedom of speech, then F you, F this country. I'm not going to pay tax for the rest of my life to a system that's completely rigged against me, and I'll arrange my income sources in such a way where I'm paying the bare minimum tax. This system has basically aggravated people to the point where they're just like, F this system.
Fucking hell's going on? It's £2.35 for a tin of ravioli. How much is a curry in 7-Eleven? Look, I'm not going to bang on about the cost of everything too much, although it is a joke, because really this actually goes a lot deeper. Everyone that I speak to in the UK, it just seems like they're all just about getting by. And when you're in the UK, you can't help really shake the feeling that everyone's just trying to get as much as they possibly can out of you. Like, every time I go back, it seems the cost of everything just goes up significantly. Think about it, right? Everywhere you go, people are asking themselves and talking internally, and they're asking the question, how much can we charge? And the reason they ask this is because everyone else is asking that same question. They're also asking, how much can we charge? And so there is just this endless loop of everyone just trying to fleece everyone. And
so, very important point here. So firstly, he goes through the cost of a tin of spaghetti, right? A tin of spaghetti is $3. I'll put it in US dollars. And then he's showed the cost of the spaghetti meal in Thailand from 7-Eleven there. It was $1.5 roughly, right? So a tin of spaghetti is $3 in the UK. It's $1.5 for a bigger spaghetti meal from the 7-Eleven in Thailand. So just shows you a bit of the ridiculousness of the pricing in the UK. And it is like that. Every time you go to the grocery store, you're like, why is this so high? I understand there's inflation, government money printing, but a lot of this is just other forms of inflation, which we'll cover now. Inflation is often used as a legitimate reason, but sometimes an excuse for what these people are getting away with. So let's go through the different types of inflation. There's shrinkflation, whereby companies will save money by giving you less. And you might remember the famous case of the Toblerone chocolate bar, where they effectively changed the shape of the Toblerones of their chocolate bar and the little triangles on it to actually give you less chocolate, but it looks like it's the same. Also, Subway had a popular example where Subway footlongs, they're technically not a foot long, they're technically actually 10 inches and not 12 inches. And that's another case of shrinkflation, where they're giving you less and lying to you. Then there's greedflation, whereby companies are taking advantage of inflationary conditions to raise prices more than needed to increase their profits. You have skimpflation, where companies raise prices while reducing the quality and frequency of services, like housekeeping. And one thing I noticed about a lot of hotels that I've been in through work travel is sometimes nowadays they don't clean the hotel room every day. You have to actually, put a sign on your door that it needs to be cleaned. And that's how they kind of save money. It's little things like that called skimpflation. Then there's brickflation, where inflation impacts the housing market, where rising costs and interest rate make property less affordable, which you definitely have with high interest rates. Tipflation, where there's higher demand for you to pay tips. Shadowflation, whereby consumers might not immediately notice things like cheaper materials and less durable ingredients, even though the price hasn't changed, you're just getting lower quality goods. Then you have funflation, whereby cost of leisure activities, eating out, travel, streaming services all cost more compared to other sectors of the economy. So there's so many different types of inflation where you're getting essentially screwed by this system. And here we got, on top of that, not only are you getting screwed financially from this inflation, workers are essentially being subject to higher taxes, right? If you're not familiar with the term budget, the government has a regular budget once or twice a year where they review the government finances and increase taxes or do all these type of different things around government spending. So, budget tax rises will hit our wages. There's going to be higher national insurance payments, which are like a form of social security that you have to make for your unemployment insurance. So it really is this intense environment where you're just getting nothing and you're getting screwed by the tax, by the inflation and so on. And you're just expected to play along with it and pretend like it's normal.
Generosity and freedom. Stabbings and theft are on the rise. And it feels like my local high street is turning into Skid Row. I've got nothing but sympathy for the poor souls who are addicted to the drugs. But what is it that's driving them to drugs in the first place? They exist in a society entirely devoid of meaning, and they are constantly on the brink of financial collapse. My local Tesco has a security guard in it, and it's got a safety glass across the counter. Do you know, when you go up to the door, you have to stand there and wait because someone looks in a camera and decides if they're going to let you in. This is a Tesco. I tried to go to Co-op and buy some food, and they didn't have any meat because all the meat had been stolen. What part of any of this sounds like great Britain.
The things I wanted to point out is around theft. Yes, there's definitely more theft, as I mentioned, in shopping malls. I also noticed when I go to the grocery store and it's particularly empty. I went to Iceland, which is a kind of UK grocery store where they sell lots of frozen food. That's the main purpose of the store. And like the security guards following me around. I only bought 1 or 2 items, and maybe because they thought I looked suspicious or something. But you notice this type of thing where like you're always kind of under attack, not only by censorship, by security guards thinking you're going to steal something. All this type of weird dynamics that you've got to deal with. And he's talking about security guards in these small grocery stores, these small like corner shops. It just becomes ridiculous. It does feel like, you know, you're always kind of under threat from people watching you or being suspicious of you. And then also there's lots of dynamics here, you know, around depression, isolation, people feeling a lack of meaning in life. There's always these groups with different elements of tension. You know, people have different identity groups, race, gender, orientation, things like that. And then this very passive aggressive social status competition which exists in the UK, which is kind of ironic because people are increasingly being pushed into crabs in a bucket mentality where people can never climb up and climb the social ladder or have any level of social mobility whatsoever. So kind of playing this passive aggressive social game for someone having a slightly nicer watch or nicer car than the next person is kind of ridiculous at this point, because it's gotten so bad how bad the middle class has been crushed. And then again, you have all this media, all this social tension, pumping hate, passive aggressiveness. There's general sense of anger that anyone could snap at any moment. You get this vibe constantly be on edge, lots of negativity in the air. It's a general vibe. You know, if you speak to anyone who visits the UK over a long time period, not just sees the tourist sites, there is a general depression. There's a general greyness. People talk about grey skies in the UK, but there's a general depression and negative mentality within the UK, which completely lifts over you and escapes you once you leave the country. And I've had that many times when I've visited parts of Latin America or Japan or China, places like that. Not saying these places are perfect, Albania, places like that. You can't lose the sense of negativity in the air. Everyone wants to talk about individualism and focusing on yourself and you being independent of the negativity around you. The truth is the vibe around you does impact you and how you think, right? So if you're surrounded by negativity, after a certain point, you can't always have a barrier and have a shield around you, metaphorically speaking, from all the negativity. At some point it's going to have an impact on you. You can't be delusional to think everyone's just independent and they can be completely independent of negativity around them, right? And the thing with the news, all the signs of collapse around you, you're not allowed to speak about it. People will think it's socially uncomfortable for you to mention the obvious signs of collapse around you. As I mentioned, fireworks in the street, people being drunk in the street, loads of trash everywhere, overflowing trash cans everywhere, not just like 1 or 2 on the odd Friday. It's just constantly around you, crazy people on the streets. It's just, there's too many signs. It's like you go through one day, you won't see one weird thing, like one crazy person rambling to themselves in public. You'll see all those things I mentioned just in one day, to the point where you're like, why am I still here? Why do I have to put up with this? And why am I getting so little for all the effort I'm putting in?
Rioting, violence, fear, separation. Living in the UK just creates like such separation between you and other groups of people. When I'm in Thailand, all I feel is like this overwhelming just love for everybody and just peace, world peace. But in the UK, they're just trying to separate and segment us into these different groups, be it religious groups, class groups, sexually preferential groups. When I was in the UK, it literally felt like I couldn't escape it. You walk into the shops, the newspapers all on the side with just drama. The news and riots is everywhere on the television. In the UK, there's almost just like this underlying sense of anxiety that just permeates your existence. Who would have known 2024?
So this is what I mean, okay? So essentially, he's got a good point there. And sometimes you think it's just in your head because you're always being gaslit. Everyone's saying, no, it's you. You need to stop being negative, stop being cynical. But actually, many people feel this way. You're just not allowed to verbally express it. And you can see that violent crime is on the rise. UK has become less peaceful in the last decade. It says that the UK is 11% less peaceful than a decade ago, driven by increases in reported crimes. And the violent crime rate has risen by more than 1/3 in the last decade. So that's 33% increase. That is crazy. Why are these countries getting worse? They're meant to be these countries that are forever getting better. The West is the leader of the world somehow, but no, they're in decline. They're living on the legacy of their previous reputation, which just simply isn't holding up anymore. Like I say, in some of my recent videos, you can essentially, if you have very low requirements for what you need, and I don't mean low living standards, but you don't need to be around super expensive parts of town, you don't not obsessed with social status or buying expensive watches and cars, you can live a higher quality of life like that guy does in Thailand, right? He moved from the UK to Thailand, working on different aspects of digital marketing is in his case. So it's just like the UK needs to pull people towards it if it wants good quality people, but the UK is pulling low quality people towards it. Leeches, parasites, people trying to basically, maggots basically sucking the country dry like a dead corpse. That's what the UK is. It's like a corpse on the floor. There's maggots, parasites, leeches, everyone trying to extract the last bit of blood from it, resources from it before it's completely sucked dry, basically. That's what they wanted. That's what this establishment wanted. That's what the economic forums wanted. They didn't want a prosperous UK, right? And the people, I'll say this as nice as I can, they did what they can to stand up. But, in order to stand up to this evil system, it's going to take a lot more than what we've seen in the last months. That's all I'll say. And that's why there's no real group solution. That's why you need to plan for your long-term financial stability or your career stability. And I myself work as a career coach. I have worked at Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. I've seen behind the scenes of a lot of these banks, these institutions, just this system in general. And if you're watching this and you're like, Keir Starmer's a bad guy, there are thousands of Keir Starmers that run all major Western institutions, run all. If you think, it's just Joe Biden, it's just AOC, it's just Rayna, whatever her name is, it's just this handful of people. No, the entire institution around you, all these places are run by liberal men and feminist women, and they don't want the best for you. They think you're an idiot if you want a country with secure borders. They think you're an idiot if you want low tax so you can be an entrepreneur and build a successful business. They think you're a bad person if you eat meat. They think you're a bad person if you drink milk. They think you're backwards and dumb if you want to do any of those things. And they think you're low class. They think you're a Neanderthal, misogynist man if you believe in gender roles. They think the modern man, or in their vision, is some kind of effeminate sissy, basically, right? You can see, I don't want to use this example, but if you're a man like Russell Brand to a certain extent, that's what they want the modern man to be. This isn't just a handful of politicians. This is an entire evil establishment. So you need to kind of see through it and plan ahead for that. I'm not saying everyone has to leave the UK. Understand the intense level of social programming. For some people, it might be buying some farmland and living with their family in a lower cost location in the UK. Some people it's living abroad. But if a system's trying to screw you, you have to operate on the basis the system's trying to screw you. You're not trying to be a nice guy and follow all the rules. Of course, you got to follow the law. I'm not going to play along with this BS system. I'm going to be strategic with my life, and I recommend you be strategic with your life when you know a system's deliberately trying to screw you over and gaslight you and say you can't point out the problems, and you've got to play along with all the nonsense. So just move through life accordingly. I provide career advice and financial education to help people overcome the type of scenarios. There's a link in the description if you want to speak with me directly. Let me know how you feel about the UK, if you're living in the UK, and what your plans are to be here long term, to be financially stable. If you're not from the UK, let me know in the comments what you think about the perception of the UK, because finally, I think in the last few months, you've seen the news coverage from America and elsewhere, seeing how tense it's getting in the UK and how unhappy people are. So let me know what you think about the UK from an outsider perspective. So thanks for listening. 2 recommended videos on your screen right now, and I'll see you next time.